The World News at 6 begins with the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, describing the demand of the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors in an ultimatum issued to the federal government as absurd. Ngige said the government has given the doctors everything they want and their sense of entitlement is too much. Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors had on Saturday given the federal government 2 weeks to meet its demands or face industrial disharmony. The doctors are demanding an immediate increment in the consolidated medical salary structure to the tune of 200% of the current gross salaries of doctors. The doctors also want the immediate withdrawal and jettisoning of the bill seeking to compel medical and dental graduates to render 5-year compulsory services in Nigeria before being granted full licenses to practice. They also want the immediate implementation of CONMES, domestication of the Medical Residency Training Act, and review of hazard allowance by all the state governments as well as private tertiary health institutions where any form of residency training is done, amongst others. Let's take a listen to Chris Ngige in an interview earlier today with Arise Television addressing the 40% pay rise and the strike on no pay policy.
My ministry is at the center of it. I can tell you without any fear of contradiction or equivocation that this is the first government in Nigeria that has not done retrenchment of workers because of paucity of funds or because the economy is bad. First government, never to retrench. Even the Shagari civilian regime, they retrenched. The military governments, they retrenched. Even in Obasanjo, there was some retrenchment. But this president gave an injunction, an order, that he doesn't want anybody to lose his job. Second, I don't want anybody to be owed his salary by the federal government of Nigeria. Yes, some state governments were owing salaries, but they're not the federal government. Yes, we know that government is a holistic thing, but we also kept pressure on them to pay. This government reviewed the minimum wage we inherited from 18,000 to the lowest paid worker in Nigeria, because that's what it means, the lowest paid worker on grade level 1, step 1. We moved it from 18,000, where we met it, to 30,000. 66% raise. At the time we did it in 2019, after having discussed in a social dialogue system with labor, NECA, Employers Association, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, NASIMA, small and medium scale employers, and everybody that is affected. We did what we call in ILO social dialoguing to produce a collective bargaining. And this government, again, without the prompting of workers, after that 66%, they moved and did what is called consequential salary adjustment for everybody, vis-a-vis the 66%. So some workers got 25% adjustment, 20%, 18%, and the least people got 5%, the people on the top echelon of the wage structure. We have about 13 wage structures in Nigeria today as we speak, all consolidated for the various sectors. And that is what we've looked at. This recent adjustment we did for those on COMPS, which is called the Consolidated Public Service Scale. It's not only core civil servants that are in that scale. You have many public service workers in parastatals, MDAs, who are on COMPS. So that was the place that was adjusted about a fortnight ago, because there was also a provision made for it already in the 2023 appropriation. So it was adjusted, and the people there, because they don't have allowances, special allowances, like having call duty allowance, student supervision allowance, hazard allowance, inducement allowance, even though they put overtime work, and also some of them are exposed to hazard too. So a committee on harmonization, headed by the head of the civil service of the Federation, recommended a 40% increase, which the Presidential Committee on Salary sent to Mr. President, and it was approved. And it was given them as a peculiar allowance in the 2023 appropriation, with effect from January 1. I want to correct something you said. For these wage structures to have a salary increase, wage increase, and that have been on for people in the health sector whom you talked about. They're on CONHES, the doctors are on CONMES, the university teachers are on CONUAS. That all this something means consolidated. For example, CONUAS means consolidated university academics structure. That this is what they have suffered in the hand of FCT agency. I'm the chief labor officer of the Federation. I'm like their father. Anybody that has maltreated them has maltreated me. So I now got in touch with the FCT minister and the secretary to the government of the Federation. And a miscommunication. The FCT has a representative in the transition committee of the federal government. Julio Beja has given a work plan and said we need 1 month, starting from 29th April to 29th May, to work, to rehabilitate this place, and even expand the state box and the rest of them all. Do fresh paintings for the ground. And that work plan, because it was said, even came before the 29th and started putting their work ladders and what they call this thing they put to make people go high. They started installing them. It even wanted to interfere with the army celebration done by Mr. President last 27, on Thursday, 27. They had to be told to dismantle the scaffolding that they are put on. So this is the scenario. So the man representing FCT took this and reported back to the agency involved, called Abuja Investment Limited, that the people who manage FCT Nigeria don't like to obey laws. The statutes are there. The laws of the country are there. If you even try to enforce the law, you look odd. I'm an odd man today because I have enforced Section 43 of the Trade Disputes Act, which says that if a worker withdraws his services, he will be not entitled to any pay. That is the right to go on strike. It's allowed. You can go on strike. You can go on strike. But your employer has the right to keep that money that is due to you. And if you're on essential services, employ people to keep the services running. It's in the ILO statute books and principles on strike. Right to strike is there. Unions and workers' unions are supposed to keep what is called strike fund. They use the strike fund to pay their workers when they're on strike. All over the world, that's what is being done, except in Nigeria. Even the little African countries you see, so and even as the big ones, South Africa, their workers have strike fund from which you pay your workers when they go on strike. And that is to mean that the last option is a strike. And in some other clients too, in those other clients, before you go on strike, you call a Congress, call your workers, and they vote. And they vote also on the number of days it will last. That's why you see the things 4 days, 3 days, 7 days, highest abroad. Over here, you see a strike of 9 months. And they come back and open their hand and say, pay me. 4 months, they come back and say, pay me. And it has been happening before. And I said no last year because we have these laws. If we don't need these laws, we go to National Assembly and repeal them.
That was Chris Ngige during a live interview with Arise Television, saying that from now on, any worker who intends to go on strike will not be paid. The workers or the unions are allowed to go on strike but should not expect to be paid for the time that they do not work. Meanwhile, the national president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joseph Ajaero, on Sunday vowed that the labor union will create a hall of shame for judges that undermine the tenets of the judiciary and come up with ridiculous judgments on election petitions. Ajaero, who spoke in Abuja at a joint briefing with members of the civil society group on the labor and civil society front, stressed the need to rescue the judiciary. The movement, comprising several civil society and youth organizations, insisted that the Independent National Electoral Commission had seriously damaged the country's democracy with its poor showing at the elections. They also vowed to name and shame corrupt leaders. Co-conveners of the movement included Olisa Bakoba, a senior advocate of Nigeria, Comrade Shehu Sani, Ambassador Nkoyo Toyo, Professor Udenta, Salisu Muhammad, and Olawale Okuni. NLC was represented by its president, Joseph Ajaero, and Trade Union Congress had its general secretary, Nuhu Toro, in attendance. According to the NLC bus, the judiciary has set so many states and institutions on fire with ridiculous judgments and must answer certain questions from Nigerians. Addressing journalists at the end of the meeting at the Labour House in Abuja yesterday, the spokesperson of the CSO, Nkoyo Toto, accused INEC of attempting to destroy democracy by failing to uphold the provisions of the Electoral Act and even their own set rules. I have on the telephone barrister, a legal practitioner, actually, Justice Uhegbu. Good evening and welcome to the World News at 6.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All
right. Justice, can you hear me very well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Okay, good. So good. You've heard what the NLC boss has actually said concerning the judiciary. He literally said that the judiciary has set the nation on fire on some judgments, ridiculous judgments, especially that they've taken recently. And now we have cases at the Election Petition Tribunal. Judge is saying that the labor union will create a hall of fame for judges that undermine the tenets of the judiciary and come up with ridiculous judgments on election petitions. Now, there are a couple of petitions at the election petition concerning the just concluded elections, and a lot of Nigerians are skeptical on the neutrality and objectivity that will be upheld by the judges who are in charge of the election petition tribunal, considering how things have been in the past here, where judges could easily be bribed, where the upper hand of who has the money to pay the right hand or pay the left hand better gets to win the case. Do you think that there is a way that the judiciary can redeem itself through its conduct in the upcoming election petition, now that the tribunal will soon be set up? Do you think they can redeem themselves on how they go on with the election petitions at the tribunal?
Well, the truth is that by law, it is only the election tribunal that will have the powers to determine petitions arising from the conduct of every election. But be it as it may, judges will be appointed and they will have to do the needful. The only problem there is that most times we will not ask ourselves a question. The judges being appointed, are they of a impeccable character? Because we need to look at the character of the people you are appointing in election petition tribunal. Because for democracy to move on in Nigeria, especially at this dispensation and this nascent democracy, we must have people that will live above board without fear of favor, to do the needful and to deliver justice the way it should be. I remember when I was in school, one of the books, the novel we read, The Incorruptible Judge. So the issue today is this: do we still have incorruptible judges today in our system? I think that is a question for the judiciary. Fortunately enough, I belong to that that clan, that is the judiciary. But I will make you to say that there are still judges that are not corrupt. There are still so many judges outside there that will do the needful. But the most important thing here is for any judge that is appointed to handle election matters to know that it's a service for humanity, service to the nation, and not for self. When we were in the law school, we were taught as lawyers that your first duty as a lawyer is to the state, that is to the country. Then second, to your client before yourself. But unfortunately, what we're witnessing today is issue where most of us are not taking themselves first priority before any other thing.
All right. Okay,
you're
sir.
first a lawyer before you become a judge.
All right. The spokesperson of the CSO, Koyotoru, accused INEC of attempting to destroy democracy by failing to uphold the provisions of the Electoral Act and even their own set rules. And based on this statement is concerning the elections, the petitions already at the tribunal. And do you think Nigerians do not trust the authenticity of how the case will go on at the tribunal? Remember that the group is lamenting that the Independent National Electoral Commission seriously damaged the country's democracy with its poor showing at the elections. They also vowed to name and shame corrupt leaders, and they also stated that sometimes the judiciary did not help matters with some ridiculous judgments that are made, especially in election petitions, in several other elections that we have, experienced or gone through in the country, and how the cases are being handled. Do you think that Nigerians actually trust the judges, trust the process that will take place at the petition? Nobody is trying to predict anything. But based on how things have taken place in this part of the world, do you think Nigerians have any idea of hope of how the election petitions will be handled?
No, the truth is that at this stage, at this level, no one can predict or will say this is what will be the outcome of the election tribunal. Because if you do that, there's no need going to court or going to the tribunal in the first place. So we should leave it to the wise men there who would determine the election vis-a-vis facts that are laid on the table. But I want us to also understand one thing. You see, most times the layman outside there, the litigants do not understand some of these things because, first of all, you look at the facts that is presented before the court. It's not about sentiment.
Okay.
It's about facts. You look at the facts. Because if, for example, you're supposed to present facts to win your case, and there's an error one way or the other, the court is not a Father Christmas to give you what you did not ask for. And whatever you ask for, you must also prove it to an extent to convince the court. And that is why in law we say that the onus is on he who asserts to prove. So, for example, if you're saying that I, Justice, committed an offense, the onus is on you that is saying that I committed an offense to prove that I actually committed an offense, and not for me to begin to say I committed an offense, because you are the one that is asserting that I committed an offense. So most times, these are the issues we try to mix up. You see, at times the way people look at it outside there is not the way it is. So when you present your matter and facts and figures the way it should be, I don't think there is any judge that will not do the needful. Because in law, let me give you an example. That what we call ratio dissidence die in deciding a matter. And the ratio dissidence is the major reason, the fact, the ratio, why that judgment was given in that direction. So I'm not even talking about the technicalities here. So as far as I'm concerned, it is an issue where I tell people, present your facts the way it should be and the way it should go, so that you don't make unnecessary mistakes. All
right, Justice, because of time, let me ask you this final question. The presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 elections, Peter Obi, has said that Nigeria cannot get anything right unless workers' welfare is well taken care of. And he made this statement at the commemoration of this year's May Day celebrations at the Eagle Square, Abuja, noting that this is the reason he is insisting on moving the country from consumption to production. Now, I played an excerpt of the Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, where he made a statement concerning the various, labor unions that are available in the country. And he made a statement towards the end of that excerpt where he said that any striking worker who does not who wants to go on strike can go on strike, no problem, but that they should not expect to be paid. That it's actually in the labor laws, that it's only in Nigeria where a practice is done where workers will go on strike and then they tell you that before they kind of cease from the strike, you have to pay them for the days or the months that they did not work. And he's trying to impose that policy of no work, no pay. Whatever demands or grounds that there is, if dialogue cannot resolve it, do not expect to be paid if you go on strike. Now, Peter Obi is now saying that if we do not try to correct these anomalies, we'll continue to have issues whereby the Nigerian workers will never feel comfortable or have a conducive working environment to thrive, to work. What's your take on that? Very briefly.
The truth is that there will always be issues. But the most important thing here is that for me, we're supposed to look at the labor law or the labor law in Nigeria as it is today again holistically, and look at the areas there could be amendments, because for me it is overdue for amendment, because the law is to harmonize with the society. The implication of that is that as the society grows, the law grows alongside with the society. So the labor law, we should look at it very well to look some areas where amendment is needed for the meaning and well-being of the workers. Because when you talk about workers consume about 90% of the productive system of this country or the economy. Let's put it in that, from the federal government to the state to the local government areas. If not for the workers, then what else can someone do? So first of all, we need to look at the labor laws and also capture, most importantly, the welfare of the workers. Because if the welfare of the workers is well taken care of, all these things you were talking about today, strike and all that, will not be happening. There are some states, for example, where workers are being owed, in some months, 6 months and all that. Go to some universities, their lecturers, they are owing them like 6 months and all that. And you still expect them to be coming to class. You still expect them to be doing things. And when they go on strike, you not tell them that they are not supposed to go on strike. It is no work, no pay. I mean, for me, it's impunity.
All right. Thank you so much.
Impunity should stop.
Thank you. Thank you, Justice Ohibu, for being part of the World News at 6 right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. We appreciate your input.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu has assured Nigerian workers of a minimum wage, social and economic justice. He gave the assurance today in Abuja in his solidarity message to Nigerian workers on the 2023 International Workers' Day. He added that workers in the country would have a living wage to have a decent life and provide for their families under his leadership. The two-term former Lagos State Governor also assured Nigerian workers that he was a dependable ally and co-laborer in the fight for social and economic justice for all Nigerians. He said his plans for better welfare and working conditions for Nigerian workers were clearly spelled out in his renewed hope agenda for a better Nigeria. He said it was a covenant born of conviction which he was prepared to keep. He also noted that it was a fight against poverty, ignorance, disease, disunity, ethnic and religious hate, and all negative forces that contend against the stability and prosperity of the nation. Elsewhere, the Egyptian border has been opened for the evacuation of Nigerian students fleeing from Sudan. The buses arrived in Sudan to evacuate Nigerian students caught in the ongoing crisis. The buses were meant to take the students to the Egyptian border from where they were to be airlifted to Nigeria. However, in getting to the Aswan border in Egypt, they were refused entry. NIDCOM disclosed the Egyptian authorities were insisting on visas and that the Nigerian mission in Egypt was working to rectify the issue. Hopeful for a resolution, the Nigeria Air Force evacuation team left for Aswan Airport on April 29 to airlift the stranded Nigerians. Confirming the update, the chairman, Nigerians and Diaspora Commission, Abike W. Erewa, tweeted, "The border has just been opened with stringent conditions after President Buhari's intervention with the Egyptian president." Also, still on the news, with temperatures soaring to more than 40 degrees centigrade at this time of the year, sleep outside the garden is really so scary, especially for residents currently residing in Sudan's Omdurman city. Also, there is fighting between the Sudanese army, paramilitary rapid forces, which is all around the north, south, east and west of Sudan. However, the army fighter jets are a constant reminder that Sudan is now in a state of war, which is taking a lot of time for some residents to actually realize and manifest with the reality. To wrap up the world news at 6, here again are the main stories. You heard that the Minister of Labour and Employment has disclosed that resident doctors' demand is absurd. NLC vows to create a hall of shame for corrupt workers. Tinubu assures Nigerian workers a better wage. Egyptian authorities open border for Nigerians stranded in Sudan. And of course, fighter jets are roaring above many homes in Omdurman concerning Sudan crisis. That is a wrap on the world news at 6 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Mwachukwu. Good evening and thank you for